Does all experience end forever? Or do we live on somehow? Well over half of all humanity believes that death is not the true end of life, and that beyond this mysterious threshold, something continues on. The standard view among secular academics is that these beliefs are no more than wishful thinking, a product of our fear of death and our inability to comprehend the ultimate end of experience. I too struggle to imagine how this vast universe could be organised in a way that preserves all minds at the point of death, presumably for eternity. Personally, I'm not religious, but nevertheless I don't believe we can simply dismiss the possibility of survival. Despite the many discoveries of modern science, reality remains a deeply mysterious place. There are, for example, respected philosophers and thinkers who believe that there is a not insignificant possibility that our entire reality is a simulation created by an advanced civilization with goals beyond our comprehension. It goes without saying that if we do live in a simulation, all bets are off about what we can expect to experience at death. Many believe that reports like those of near-death experiences, NDEs, and apparent reincarnation offer possible evidence of survival. In the world of the paranormal, we find reports of strange phenomena that resist ordinary explanation, and I've read various cases that strike me as deeply anomalous. I actually studied psychology at one of the few universities in the world with a parapsychology department, the University of Northampton in the UK, and reading about some of these strange cases was on my undergraduate syllabus. While ultimately I'm not convinced by these cases, I don't reject the possibility of life after death. In fact, I'm convinced that it's real. In the end, it was not strange paranormal phenomena that eventually convinced me that consciousness does survive death. Instead, it was a philosophical argument that I encountered much later as a postgraduate in philosophy. This argument, as we will explore today, appears to demonstrate that consciousness is immortal, that death as a real end to conscious experience is an epistemic illusion, and that following death we should expect not oblivion, but an enduring sense of always having existed, albeit manifest in the form of other conscious beings. This argument, which comes from the philosopher Thomas Clarke, might be seen as a form of impersonal reincarnation, and it is, I think, the very least we should expect to experience after death. In spite of this seemingly bold claim, it is a view that does not rely, as it might at first seem, on some exotic view of consciousness. This argument, as we will explore, would hold true even if we live in an entirely physical universe, governed by completely unconscious, directionless physical laws. To be clear, my own view is that consciousness may well be more fundamental than current materialist science has appreciated. But I find it fascinating that a view that makes no such claim offers the most profound argument for survival that I have heard. It is this argument, together with its extraordinary implications, that we will explore today. As I mentioned, this argument originates with the philosopher Thomas Clarke, and it can be found in his essay titled Death, Nothingness and Subjectivity. Clarke begins his essay by pointing out a surprisingly common error made by secular and scientific thinkers, that if death is the end of experience, then the dying individual should anticipate being cast into an oblivion of nothingness at death. Clarke lists many secular thinkers who replace religious notions of heaven and hell with the concept of nothingness. Clarke points out that many secularists have mistakenly depicted death as though it were a kind of positive nothing, an eternal situation into which the experiencing subject is plunged as though into a dark ocean at the moment of death. The error, as Clarke points out, quote, is to reify nothingness, make it a positive condition or quality for example of blackness, and then place the individual in it after death, so that we somehow fall into nothingness to remain there eternally." End quote. Clarke is far from the first to point out this logical fallacy. Over 2 millennia ago, the Greek philosopher Epicurus wrote, quote, "Death is nothing to us. When we exist, death is not, and when death exists, we are not." End quote. Clarke argues that when we dispense with this flawed idea that a kind of positive nothing awaits us at death, a strange and counterintuitive picture emerges, a new conception of immortality.